Alright, what is up, my 59th division? How's it going? So today we're going to be viewing episode 3 of The Bad Batch. Right now it is myself, Ghostly Nate, and your commander as well. Introduce yourself is...
What up? How's it going?
In this episode was more of like a character development episode is what it seemed. It wasn't really so much as an action-packed, here's a lot of battles and fights going on. It seemed like more character development. What do you think of the episode is?
I'm gonna be honest with you, it kind of made me sad, and it just got me sad. That's it. That's all I can say. Now that I think about it, it just really got me sad, but it was a really well written episode all throughout.
Okay. So in the beginning of the episode, we see everyone on the ship. We see the rest of 99th and Omega on the ship. And it starts out with Echo and Tech trying to fix the ship, talking about how their ship was damaged when they fled Seleucime. And they ended up crashing on some moon. In the crash leading up to it, Wrecker hits his head, and he hits his head pretty hard, and throughout the rest of the episode, he starts complaining that he has this non-stop severe piercing headache, which is kind of interesting, because I mean, Wrecker has taken shots from droids, explosions, he's taken a sniper shot even from Crosshair to the shoulder, continued to kick in and doesn't complain, but this piercing headache seems to really, because it's just throughout the entire episode. And then Tech starts to believe that this is the inhibitor chip basically enhancing itself, and it's coming out of its like preventative state, that basically it's like, you know, hey, I'm here, I'm starting to take over, you know, your enhanced normalities are not being able to you know, ignore my commands right now, basically. What do you think about that? About how this is going to lead up to maybe possibly the 99th having to save him later on in the series, and him possibly carrying out an Order 66 or joining up with Crosshair? What do you think about that?
It really got me scared because I like Wrecker. Wrecker is such a fun dude. Like, obviously you have like the Bad Batch, they're all like serious and stuff like that, but Wrecker is the one person that, even though he is serious, he is still just a big goofball that he at least breaks tension throughout the team. Like, all those people, like, they need like that tension breaker, and that's Wrecker. Whenever something serious, like when something somber comes in, Wrecker's in there and he just says something that just relieves the tension, and then they're all back to normal. So for them to possibly lose that one person that could break all the tension is going to be very disheartening. I really do hope that they're able to remove the inhibitor from Wrecker so that way that doesn't happen.
Interesting. When they're on the ship and they realize, I believe it's Echo, Echo and Tech state that they need a certain piece of a ship, that during their battle, a piece on their ship that's basically required for takeoff, landing, and just their energy source overall is damaged. Basically, it's like their car battery is damaged, pretty much is what it is. And they need a replacement for it, and there's only, according to the manual on the ship, there's only one replacement on board. And they try to find it, and they see Omega, like, asks if it's in this, like, box-looking thing, and it turned out to be Crosshair's personal locker box, which is kind of interesting that it got there originally and it wasn't taken off of the ship, because I thought they removed all of his stuff, but I guess that was left there. And it starts, and you can see that they start to miss him, and even Wrecker admits he misses him, and you can see in the others that they miss him as well, because it's like missing your own personal brother is what it is. They're missing a family member. So what do you think about that part as well?
So yeah, like you said, it brings out more emotion, because you would think it's like, oh, they probably hate Crosshair, you know, this and that. No, they actually miss him, because they've been with Crosshair since the beginning. Like, they've done multiple missions. As you saw, like back in the first episode, you saw Wrecker and his tally board, and you saw how many like tallies they had on the wall. It shows that they've done this many missions together, and it also shows that even though Crosshair ultimately, you know, got his inhibitor fixed and betrayed them, it goes to show that even though that's something like that would happen, like a simple betrayal does not change their feelings towards Crosshair, because they've had so many things happen to them before where they'll believe that there can be something down the road. And that's something that shows as well, because it shows that they still have emotion, and it shows that even though he did shoot at them, he did betray them, they will never hate him because he is one of them. And that's what I really love what they did in this episode.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool too how they did that. So now we get cut to Kamino, back to Kamino. We see Tarkin and Nala. Nala, for those of you that don't know, is the name of the Kaminoan nurse, the Kaminoan doctor, excuse me. We see Tarkin and Nala finishing a scan on Crosshair to basically boost his chip, because they want to keep him there. They don't want his enhanced clone abilities, his defectiveness, to resume prohibiting the chip from, giving orders. They don't want his freedom, his free will to be returned back to him. They want him to be under the control of the chip, and so they keep on enhancing it and enhancing it. And then we see Rampart, who was actually, you see him in a hologram from episode 2 of The Bad Batch, who was saying, out of the best and, best interest for the Empire and best interest for you, we are going to be, making sure you are registered and all your ships and vehicles are registered as well. So come along and register them and you'll get yada, yada, yada. The whole propaganda bullshit. We see him meet on Kamino, meet with Tarkin. It's really cool that we can see that, because later on Rampart will probably have a larger meaning to the story than just him meeting up with Tarkin, because at the moment it's just basically him meeting up with Tarkin to discuss the future of the Empire's soldiers, basically. And we see Crosshair and the recruits. Now these recruits are brought in, I believe, by Rampart on behalf of Tarkin's orders. We see them being scanned in a medbay by medical droids, and they talk about how the Empire, because this is actually a really interesting part, because I always thought the Republic, for the longest time, I always thought the Republic was like, oh, we're taking care of everyone that we are allies with, housing, finances. Well, apparently that's not the situation. Apparently the Empire offered them more. Now it could just be due to them being the first beta version of stormtroopers. The Empire apparently offered them more than what the Republic did, and they offered them living stability with plenty of finances and financial security and housing situations as well, which is really interesting to see how it's a different point of view than it's just like, oh, I'm just doing this for the hell of it, or I'm just doing it for this and this and this reason. It's like, I'm doing it because of these reasons, basically. And it's really interesting to see that. What do you think about that? How it's like, how Tarkin and Rampart are working together on this, and we see the recruits and Crosshair, the early stages of them, and what do you think about that part of them and like the med bay and stuff?
I thought it was really interesting, and it also gives us like a close-on look, like basically the first on-scene look of when they stop using clones, and they'll start using regular people. And it also goes to show that a certain amount of people can always be bought out by money at the end of the day, like you can't necessarily like trust that everyone will stay loyal. There's always going to be those group of people who's like, hey, this side's paying me more than you are. If you don't do anything about that, I'm gonna, skedaddle on over there. So it also goes to show that, and it's very interesting to see, because going on like earlier when the clones were first made, you think, all right, these are going to be clone soldiers for the rest of, however long they're going to use. The stormtroopers will always be clones, but now, later down the future, that's not necessarily the case, and now we get to see exactly when that plan started to turn into fruition. So I actually found that really interesting, and I can't wait to see like how much farther along of the way of that we are going to see come the Bad Batch.
Yeah. Rampart and Tarkin bring in these new recruits of elite soldiers, and we see them, and Tarkin puts them under the command of Crosshair, and we all know why, and it's because Crosshair is this elite clone trooper. He's this elite sniper that that the Empire has under control. And he says, you know what? To see whether clones are worthy or not, we're going to put him in charge of these elite soldier recruits, because that's what each one of these recruits are. They're these elite soldiers that the Empire hired as basically the early stages of stormtroopers. Now, we switch back to the moon, and a creature called the Moon Dragon, which feeds on this electrical energy, steals the necessary piece, the replacement piece that they need to fix the ship. And Hunter and Omega go on an entire mission to retrieve it, and basically it's like a bonding experience. And we get to see Hunter explain to Omega about how each of the 99th have their own different abilities, and his is like tracking and, you know, being able to have enhanced senses, like, you know, your, you know, sense of smell, touch, feel, sight, all that sort of stuff, hearing. And he explains to her all about that, and it leads us to wonder more, like, okay, what's her power, what's her, because she was stated to be another member of the Bad Batch. Basically, she was a defective clone as well. And we don't know what her power is just yet, but a lot of people are starting to speculate that maybe her power is learning quickly, like very, very quickly, being able to copy what others do. Because we see her in the first, I think the second episode of the Bad Batch, I believe, either the first or the second. Can't remember which exactly. We see her pick up a blaster rifle, your basic DC blaster rifle, and like prevents Crosshair from shooting Wrecker and Hunter and all them. And I mean, they were like 50 feet away from each other. They were really good distance away from each other. She literally blasted the rifle out of his hand and made him jump to cover. While in this episode, we see her take the pistol from Hunter when he passes out from certain things that happen in the episode. When he passes out, she takes his blaster pistol and she goes into these tunnels, into the Moon Dragon's tunnels, and goes and finds the piece, which she finds later on. And it leads me to think that she basically is able to copy what others are able to do to the T. Like, she's basically able to just copy entirely. Like, whatever someone does, she'll do it exactly as well. What do you think about that, Is? What do you think about that situation, about how they played out, Hunter and Omega going on this journey to recover the piece, this mission, and him passing out and her taking over the mission entirely?
So actually, well, before we continue on with that, there was also one little thing that was also said, and that was when Omega asked, you know, Hunter about Crosshair, and, you know, he went out and says, hey, we don't hate him. It's just I feel like Hunter hates himself because they have the saying of no man left behind, and he feels that he failed Crosshair by leaving behind. And so you also get to see that inner turmoil Hunter has with himself because he feels like he has failed Crosshair. Now going back into Omega and, you know, her abilities, I do feel like that is a higher strong possibility because back in the first episode, she takes a blaster, shoots Crosshair to stop him from killing Wrecker, and then now she's able to follow the dragon into its den like Hunter was. So in order to see like her slowly showing what she can do and how she can be a valuable asset, really goes off and tells us that Omega is more than whatever meets the eye to, you know, everybody. And it also goes to show why the Kaminoans, you know, the head nurse and the executive wanted to keep Omega a secret, because if, you know, the Empire were to get word of this, that Omega is able to copy everything she sees, pinpoint to a T, they can use that and they can utilize her to the best of her abilities and make even stronger, you know, clones, or like essentially like be able to use her to, you know, do a lot more damage to the Republic and to like all to the resistance that's showing up. So with Omega, it actually makes me more interested to see how far can this so-called ability go, and exactly how long can she replicate it, or like how exactly to how much she can replicate. So I actually find that interesting and can't wait to see, you know, later down the line of what happened.
Yeah, because I mean, her story is definitely intriguing, and it's definitely fascinating, and she's a cool character. And what they'll be able to do with her later on is really, really, really interesting to see. Because her character development is definitely there. It's definitely going to be an excellent character development for Omega, especially with 99. Now, getting back to Crosshair and the new recruits, back on Kamino, we see Rampart and Tarkin send talk about with Lama Su, who is the Prime Minister of Kamino. They talk about basically how recruits are not as experienced or not as powerful as the clones, but they're much more affordable and cheaper than what the clones are. And this leads Lama Su, who you can see in like episode 2 of Attack of the Clones, and you see him throughout the Clone Wars series as well. Rampart and Tarkin bring the recruits under the command of Crosshair, send them on this mission to Onderon to kill Saw Gerrera, and you know, this is where it actually gets really good. This gets to like a darker side. We get to see the darker side of the beginning of the Empire, the early stages of the Empire. We get to see the dark side of Crosshair and the Stormtroopers. Now, on the way to Onderon, we hear the recruits talk about how clones are done and useless, and recruits are better and much more powerful, and, you know, just this, you know, blabberish of who's better than the other. And Crosshair, you know, usually he looks really sinister. You can hear it in his voice, you can just see it from his face. He looks very sinister and serious all the time. But you can tell from the look that he gave that this guy, this recruit saying all this, really ticked him off. And really, I mean, really ticked him off. And we'll talk about, like, to the point of how much it ticked him off later on. What do you think about that, on how the relations between Crosshair and these new recruits is really, really iffy just from that one scene?
For me, it also shows that even though Crosshair is is being controlled and influenced by this inhibitor chip, he still has some of his feelings. Like him hearing the recruits talk smack about the clones and, you know, essentially his brothers, it really went and ticked him off, and it shows that, like, oh yes, he's under the influence of this inhibitor, yes, like, you know, he's being controlled, but he still has some sort of, like, some aspects of his feelings. And I actually find it interesting because you would think, oh, inhibitor, like, you know, they just follow orders, they don't have feelings, they're not supposed to show emotion. But, you know, Crosshair shows emotion, you know, not in the best way, but you can feel that he's angry, that he doesn't want to keep on hearing this, and that he just wants these guys to, you know, essentially shut up. So I just can't wait to see, like, what more goes on with this, and, like, how they'll branch off more and more of, you know, Crosshair, and maybe hopefully down the line, like, his feelings will get the best in the inhibitor chip, and, you know, he's able to break free of that. But again, that is very slim, and I don't think that's even possible. But, you know, that is a little bit of hope that I am clinging on to. So, you know, and just seeing these recruits just talking smack about the clone, saying that they're going to be better, also shows that, you know, they've got, you know, a pretty big history then, and being paid that much, it also possibly fuels their, you know,
ego.
Yeah. So it's actually really interesting. I can't wait to see what more they have down the line.
Now, once they land on the planet, once they land on Onderon, Crosshair and the recruits locate Saw's people. Saw isn't there with them. He isn't anywhere inside. This is just some random group that is part of his rebellion, basically, the early stages of the rebellion. And using the cover of night and their skills, they actually engage them and take out pretty much a majority of them before they can escape. You know, they're about to escape. They take out the pilot, they take out a majority of them. I think there was like 10 to 15 rebels, and keep in mind, there's only 5 people in this squad, Crosshair and then 4 recruit stormtroopers. You know, they take out a majority of them, and there's only 5 remain. And Crosshair asks the rebel leader that's remaining, the rebel soldier, if she knows the location of Saw. Now this is where it gets dark. This is where it really turns dark. And he actually gave like a really good character development for the storyline as well. She basically says no, and he shoots her saying, "I believe you," and then moves on to the others. And it's not just a way like, "Oh, I believe you." It's like a really sinister, "I believe you." Like, of course you don't know anything. Now there are only 4 remaining. 1 teen Twi'lek and 3 adults. Now, they state that they're trying to get off the planet, but we see in a lot of movies and TV shows throughout time that basically that's just a load of horse manure, and really they're probably going to go and warn Saw Gerrera after, if they get, set free. Crosshair probably saw through this and decided to have his squad kill them so they can report back, and be like, "Hey, we found them, this is the planet they were on, mission accomplished," whatever. The squad member, though, who was giving Crosshair a bad time on the ship, denies orders and says, "We are troopers, not executioners," which is a very deep and heavy line, because we don't really hear that in the movies, nor do we hear it in really the Clone Wars or in the previous episodes of The Bad Batch. And he tries to then convince the other squad members to disobey the orders, saying this is not what we signed up for, this is not what we're supposed to do. And Crosshair then tells him this is why clones are superior to recruits, because they follow orders to the mission, and he shoots him. He literally point blank pulls out his DC-17 blaster pistol and shoots him. And the other squad members are like, "Okay, pecking order, I get it, I understand, you're the leader, alright, we won't disobey orders." And he says a good soldier follows orders when he shoots him. Which is really dark for Crosshair to do, and you can tell the ship is really taking over and controlling him, because that's not really something Crosshair would do normally if it was back in the Clone Wars. He wouldn't really do that. It wasn't until the chip really started telling them to execute Order 66 that his personality completely changed. He then orders the squad to finish the order, finish the mission, and execute the remaining people. And they're all like, "Alright, I don't want to wind up dead, so we're gonna do that." And they return to Kamino, only to be met by Tarkin, who sees they are 1 man short, and states that the clone production will continue for now until they are officially ready to switch to recruits, to more elite recruits. And he turns to Rampart saying that, and he's like, "Until you have better, elite troops, and you have better recruits, and ones that are willing to follow orders and complete the mission by all means necessary, no matter what, then will continue with the production of clones." So what do you think about that whole mission there, and about all those scenes, and Crosshair as a leader, and all the dominance that went on, and just that entire scenario that went on? What do you think about that? It was like I thought it was very dark, but yet excellent character development.
Yeah, going off on what you said, yeah, it was dark. It was very, very dark, which also made me kind of sad, because knowing Crosshair, he's not usually this type of person. Like, he wouldn't execute civilians, innocent people, but with this inhibitor, he goes and does it like it's nothing. Mm-hmm. And he also goes off and shoots one of his troopers like it was nothing. So it shows that even though he might have some sort of his emotions, an order is an order, and he will not disobey an order, even if it means that he has to kill one of his own to complete the mission, which I find really interesting. And then when General Tarkin sees that they come back, he goes and says, "Oh, one of your troopers, is missing," and they write off like it was nothing, saying like, "Yeah, that's the way a war goes. You go out there, you risk your life. If you die, you die." Mm-hmm. And it also goes to show that the Empire just doesn't care about casualties. As long as it gets done, no matter how many casualties they'll take, they'll still, as long as they're able to crush the resistance, they don't care. While, you know, going back on before with the Republic, you know, when a person would die, they would obviously mourn for them. They would feel something. They're like, hey, we lost a brother out there. You know, we lost a good soldier. Let's, you know, take a little bit of time to, you know, collect ourselves. While, you know, again with the Empire, another dead soldier. We'll just get another one. It's fine. Continue. So it really does show the darker side of the Empire, and it also, you know, again hurts that this is how Crosshair is now becoming more and more devious, more and more sinister. And so I honestly just can't wait again to see more of what's coming down the line of the Bad Batch.
Yeah, and I know for a fact we're definitely probably going to see more of Tarkin in this whole situation, because Tarkin clearly, he obviously wants the Empire to get rid of the clones and wants what's best for the Empire. I mean, even in the Clone Wars, like, if for the viewers out there, if you guys go and watch the episode The Citadel, which I believe was season 3, episode 18 of the Clone Wars, you can go, if you go and watch it, you can see how Tarkin never really believed in the Republic. He was always close to Chancellor Palpatine, and when he found out Anakin was close to Palpatine, their relationship grew. But he never really cared for the Jedi, nor did he really like the idea of clones. And so we'll definitely be seeing more of him. So maybe we'll see some references to that, of him talking about the the previous Republic, and talking about how the Empire's much better now and stuff like that, and just seeing more hatred towards the clones in the Republic. Now, we switch to Lama Su, and who's talking to Nala. We switch to the two of them, and it's basically about how they will be starting Phase 3 of clones. And they talk about how Jango Fett's DNA is fading over time. I mean, basically, it's like, you know, if you think about it, it's them using a copy machine. And it's them just copying something every single time over and over again until the ink runs dry. So this could lead up to them either resorting to using Crosshair's DNA for an enhanced force of clones, which would keep the contract between the Republic and who's now the Empire, and the Kaminoans, you know, still secured and, you know, running. Otherwise, if they get the contract removed and the Empire's like, nah, like, what's going to happen to Kamino, the future of Kamino? Or will it be a Force-sensitive being, or even Starkiller from the Force Unleashed games or the Expanded Universe? Now, maybe it won't be exactly Starkiller, but it could be a Force wielder. Or heck, maybe it'll even be Palpatine. I actually saw this in a comment section when I was reading through it, that one person actually thought that maybe it might have been Emperor Palpatine is who the new clone will be. Because we see his clone in Episode 9. We see him in Episode 9 talking about how he has a bunch of clones and it's not the end of him and stuff like that. So maybe it's a possibility that they are trying to work on Force-sensitive clones rather than just regular clones now. But let's say they resort back to just the usual clone troopers, right? Like, not Force-sensitive at all, just regular clones. Will they switch to Boba Fett instead of Jango Fett to keep the clone legacy running? Will they switch to a different bounty hunter? Will it be a different species? They never they don't specify. They just said we're going to have to start Phase 3 of the Clone Troopers. And later, we see Crosshair and the recruits return to their rooms, which was the 99th room, and he looks at all the markings on the walls, and this is where it starts to get emotional for the viewers and for everyone in the squad, and especially Crosshair, because they return to the room, and he's looking around, and he's seen the new recruits moving into the new bunker, the new bunk beds, and he's looking at all of them, and he's reminiscing on all the moments that him and his brothers had. He sees the skull over Wrecker's bed. He sees the markings of all the missions they completed on the wall. He's just looking around, and he just goes and sits on his bed, and, you know, you could see him pondering and thinking, like, what have I done? Where are they? Are they okay? You know, he's missing his brothers. So it's not just, you know, the Bad Batch missing them. It's not just Hunter, Wrecker, Echo, and Tech missing him. you know, he's missing the rest of his brothers as well. What do you think about that, on how it went from, you know, the dark moment to now we're going back to a more storyline area, to where it's like, you know, what'll be the future of Kamino and the clones? What'll be the future of Crosshair and these new recruits? What do you think about that part? About how they played that out?
To keep it brief and short, I just can't wait. Like, to be able to see these things play out and essentially like you know, like a plant, like, you know how you have a pot of soil, you put the little seed in, and then it eventually grows into a plant. This is essentially the seeds of that plant being placed, and I can't wait to see exactly how much, like how long it'll take for it to all to grow out into everything that it is today. And, you know, being able to see that is actually really interesting. You know, for the longest time, we didn't know what was going on after the Clone Wars and everything like that. We were just kind of like left in the dark, and we were getting like snippets here and there, but being able to see firsthand of everything that's going on is really interesting, and I can't wait to see again what more of the Bad Batch is going on, and how far are we going to go on this journey, and how much of that change and fruits of that labor is going to show.
Yeah. It'll be really exciting to see how this all turns out in the end. Like, will all the Bad Batch be turned to Order 66? Or will, you know, everyone live happily ever after? We'll see. But in the part that really leaves off on a really wholesome note overall was how in the ending we see Wrecker, because in the beginning we had a situation that had to deal with food and how rations are low, and, you know, Wrecker didn't really remember, and he forgets to realize that, you know, Omega's now on the ship too, and she's part of the crew as well. But in a wholesome ending, we see that Wrecker is really awake and smelled the roses and has said, you know, okay, you're part of the crew now, so awesome. And so what he did out of an awesome gesture is, while they were on the moon, while she was on this mission, he basically decided to surprise her with something, and that was her own personal room on the ship. Because she, at the time, she was just using the simple gonk droid as a pillow, and she was just sleeping on the floor. Literally, that's all her room was. It was just that. While the others had their own rooms, and so he decided to make her own room, and it was really cool the way it was all set up. And so it goes to show that it's not just Hunter that has grown a bond with her, it's also Wrecker as well. So it leads me to think, will we see in future episodes some moments with Echo and Tech doing some, you know, personal bonding with Omega, or will that not really be a thing? Like, will we see that? It's really interesting to see how they're growing with each other each and every episode. What do you think about the growing between her and the crew so far?
I love it, because it goes to show that even though she's really new to the Bad Batch, and, you know, they've never they never had someone else, let alone a kid, join their ship. It also shows that they're willing to adapt, and seeing that Wrecker went out of his way to make a little Omega her own little room, it goes to show that, you know, that they really do care for Omega, and she's not just some clone to them, she's a part of them, right? And essentially saying that she's family. So I can't wait to see how much more of that character development between them, and how much of that closeness and fondness they'll get later down the line. Awesome.
Alright, so everyone in the 59th Battalion, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to hit that like button, blast that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time. Now, if you guys have any input on what you think about this episode or the series so far, please put it in the comment section down below. Let me hear your inputs. We're really curious about what you have to say about it. And as always, may the Force be with you all. Any last words you want to say is?
Just hope you guys enjoy the series like we are, and I hope you have an amazing day.
All right, see you guys later. May the Force be with you all.